Look, I can't help but think that now might be a good time for a little fire and ice.
Please do not. There is never a good time for fire and ice.
What happens when you mix fire and ice?
Warm water, baby.
It's bubbling, baby. Warm water. Warm water.
It is time now for a little fire and ice. Mike Tipton, Brandon the Iceman Cone, hanging out with you over here at Bikini Joes. Our friends over here at Bikini Joes, 3390 Rich Beem Boulevard on the corner of Rich Beem and Zaragoza on the far east side of El Paso. Last week, we were at Union Draft House on the west side. This time, we're on the far east side. One of these days, we'll find a place where we can be centrally located, Brandon, but I don't know if I'm ever going to work that out because I like these places too much. They got a bunch of drink specials and everything going on today. Saturdays, Brandon, they got the $2 PBRs. They got red beers and our favorite thing, the BOGO Nachos from 11 to 4 p.m. They got the $4 Vegas bombs as well, nickel pints on select draft Sundays. And I keep saying it. I need to actually do it one of these days where we come out here to Bikini Joe's and try the Margarita Madness by one jumbo, giant, or tower margarita. And the second one, Brandon, is only $1. You cannot beat those prices. My guy, how are you doing this week?
I am fantastic. It's good to be back. I love this place, Bikini Joe's. We got basketball, we got golf, we got football, all of the sports as usual. Big UFC card tonight, UFC 282. Excited about that. Excited about being back with my buddy. And here we are, back in the saddle again. I really like this place. It's been a while since we've been here.
I think the next soccer game, right? Because you and I aren't like huge World Cup guys or anything like that, but I think the next soccer game is going to be coming up here in just a couple of minutes as well. And I feel like that's going to be on the screens as well. Let's just go ahead and get started, Brandon, with a little bit of World Cup stuff that happened yesterday. Brazil takes an L. Can't spell Brazil without an L, right?
Yep.
Argentina gets the win in the shootout penalty kicks thing against the Netherlands, and absolutely a fun time with that game. The game earlier today, Portugal falling to Morocco. I believe Morocco, this is the farthest any team in Africa has ever gone in the World Cup. Has this been enough to kind of get you going? Because, like, I see myself watching a few of these games. Like, obviously, I'm not watching the whole thing. I think yesterday I tuned in to see, like, the last 20 minutes or so of the Argentina match and then the penalty kicks and all that good stuff. But I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't watch any of the United States whenever they lost to the Netherlands, right? I think I saw, like, a grand total of maybe 15 minutes of United States action. Has this World Cup been something to, like, kind of pull you in as a casual fan?
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching the majority of the matches. It's been an extremely exciting, exhilarating World Cup thus far. And if the Brazil-Croatia game didn't get you excited about this World Cup, nothing will. I mean, you figure that Neymar gets that goal late, and it's all about Brazil moving on. And then, of course, the Croatians tie it at 1-1 with like 4 minutes to go in regulation. And then ultimately they end up winning it in with the shootout. And that was just amazing. I mean, Brazil, of course, the team that a lot of people had potentially winning it all. That was a huge upset. But, of course, don't take the Croatians lightly. And in the other matchup yesterday, my goodness, Holland coming off the big win against the United States, I figured they had a great shot of moving on. They, to me, the best team that's never won a World Cup. But, again, a situation where, that was just another great game. Goes into extras and ends up with a shootout. And another situation where, I think the last 4 World Cups, a European team has won it. And don't get me wrong, France has a really good shot. I mean, they really do. England has a really good shot. But there's some amazing teams from like South America still left. And now, of course, an African team in Morocco making it this far to the Final Four. I would love nothing more to see like an Argentina pull it off with Messi, or maybe a Morocco. Who knows? I mean, this could be the year finally where the first time in years we see a non-European team win it, and that would be the cherry on top.
I just love the fact that we're getting to watch some actually pretty decent games, right? Like, I'm not going to watch the whole thing, like I said, but it's cool tuning into like the last couple of minutes, 20 minutes or so of the game, and then witnessing, just the feverish action that they're doing as the one team that's down is trying to score its goals. The Netherlands yesterday with, scoring that tying goal in the 11th minute of extra time.
Just
like,
amazing.
It was so cool to see that. So awesome to witness that stuff going into the penalty kicks. That's the first time I've ever seen like live penalty kicks or anything like that on a stage that big, because again, I'm not a huge soccer fan, right? But it is fun to kind of like see this stuff. Like you said, it'd be cool to watch, I guess, Messi win it, because I guess it's the only thing that he hasn't done in his career, right? So it'd be like the icing on the cake for Lionel Messi going forward. But like, there are some pretty cool storylines here too, right? Like even Croatia, I would love to see them win, because I don't know if you know this or not, Brandon. In my phone, I have a song from like a band in Croatia that they put out during the last World Cup, and it just absolutely slaps, dude. Like, it's an amazing song, and it kind of like gets me going. I think Destiny knows more Croatian than she does Spanish at times, because she listens to that song more than anything else in the world, right? Like, it's awesome to like see those types of things, see the passion these other countries have. I don't think, Brandon, that I would have gone to any of the World Cup games if they were like in South America or if they were in Europe, right? Because I don't want to do that with the United States. I don't feel like we have an opportunity of winning at all, right? But I feel like, maybe coming up this next go around, they're going to be here in North America. We can go to a couple of those games, try to get some, maybe Fire and Ice down over there in Mexico City or Toronto or something.
Yeah, what's this all about? I wouldn't mind, or maybe in Big D even, because they haven't chosen the site for the championship game yet in 2026. But I bet you $1 to a donut, it may be at Jerry World. They're about to spend, I think, like $300 million more to upgrade that stadium and make it even prettier. So, Jerry's trying to get that final in 2026. But yeah, I mean, I'm very excited to see it coming back to our neck of the woods. I know it hasn't been here since '94, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that you got some great games taking place in Mexico, as you noted, Mexico City, where you were recently. Some great spots in Canada, Vancouver, and Toronto, and of course, several spots here in the United States. So, I mean, that's going to be amazing for these three nations come 4 years from now. But again, soccer fan, non-soccer fans alike, you have got to be extremely excited to see what has transpired in this World Cup. And I'm looking forward to this game kicking off here in a few minutes between England and France.
England and France, the oldest rivalry in the world.
Amazing. Going to be a good one.
Dating back to all the 100 Years' wars and all the battles they've had over the years.
And Croatia, certainly, let's not take them lightly. If I'm not mistaken, weren't they the runners-up 4 years ago?
They were.
So, I mean, they got a hell of a shot of taking it all this year. The type of win they had against the Brazilians, that's the type of win you need in a tournament like this to get the championship ultimately.
Okay, so we spoke a little bit about soccer. We're doing all that stuff. I want to know what $300 million going into Jerry World does at Jerry World, right? Because that's already – just thinking about it, that it's 13 years old or whatever.
Hard to believe.
It needs to be upgraded or updated.
Sure.
I can only imagine. Like, it's a beautiful stadium.
Really
and I'm not
is.
saying it as like a Cowboys homer, right? Like, I'm saying it as someone who's been to those games and those stadiums. That's a beautiful stadium. Mm-hmm. What more can they do to it? Where's the $300 million going to go? Is the field going to be heated and air conditioned?
Maybe. I mean, again, who knows? I mean, Jerry Jones is very innovative. I mean, say what you will about him as the GM of the Cowboys, but there's a motive behind that man's madness, and there is a motive to investing $300 million more into AT&T Stadium. And look, these brand new stadiums are arguably even nicer than AT&T Stadium, and rightfully so. They're brand new. They should be even nicer. And the one in Tennessee is going to be amazing. I think there's always little additions you can make to make these stadiums even better. And the fact that it can expand to hold 100,000 people is huge. But there's going to be little shticks and little nooks and crannies he can improve to make a bid for the 2026 World Cup final. And I'm sure they have that in their minds. And, of course, for other sporting events, too. Hence the reason why they're spending the money.
I mean, you'd figure with the Dallas Cowboys being the Dallas Cowboys, that stadium being what it is, the amount of events that it's hosted, it's got to be a front runner for the World Cup anyway.
No doubt. I mean, it's one of the top three destinations. I mean, they said New York is a possibility because it's New York. LA, I think there's going to be games in LA. If I'm not mistaken, I have to double check that. But anyways, long story short, it'll be one of the top two front runners to host the 2026 final. The 2026 final will be in the United States for sure, they've said, though.
Oh, yeah, 100%. We already know that's going to happen. So we're talking a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys right there, the stadium, all that good stuff. Let's talk about the team, that the way that they performed on the field, right? We've seen them come back now. Dak Prescott's been back for 5 games. They've gone 5-1 in his return or with him as the quarterback. They're averaging roughly 34 points a game. They put up 54 against a really good Colts defense that held Philly in check for quite some time in their game a couple of weeks ago as well. I'm always cautious when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, Brandon. They've let me down. They have hurt me. They have abused me time and time again. They're the most toxic relationship I have, and I've got plenty of them.
Line forms to the left. Take a number.
How optimistic are you? How excited are you with this Dallas Cowboys team? Because even though they're 9-3 right now, Philadelphia is 11-1.
So let me put it this way: Dallas is the scariest 9-3 team in the NFL. They are arguably the best team in the NFL, and I know I'm going to get some crap by saying that, but their defense is great, and it's getting even better, although they did lose that kid, their defensive back. His name's escaped me with the ACL, which sucks. That hurts secondary a little bit, but you're not going to throw on Diggs' side anyways. They're getting Smith back on the O-line. Ezekiel Elliott is having an amazing year, and then, oh, by the way, there's Pollard. Dak, the only thing he does that kind of upsets me is he throws one too many picks on occasion. And, oh, by the way, they may get Odell Beckham Jr. for the postseason. I mean, need I say any more? I mean, other than, an overtime loss against Green Bay, they've been virtually flawless in the last 6 games, and their defense has just been unbelievable, especially the way they performed in the third and fourth quarters against the Colts. They should be able to beat Philadelphia on Christmas Eve, especially since Dak is playing now. They should definitely win the next couple of games. Don't be surprised if they end up winning the NFC East because, again, both them and Philly finished with 1 loss in the East, then you have to go off other records, divisional records, and blah, 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 and it gets complicated. With that said, with a defense like theirs, anything is possible. I mean, there's no doubt that we've seen teams with great defenses go on to win a Super Bowl who haven't even had that amazing of an offense, but their defense has propelled them to winning a Super Bowl. I can't think of any other team, I mean, even Kansas City and even Buffalo and even Philly, that to me, if Dallas plays their A game, that the Cowboys couldn't beat at this point.
It's scary to think of it that way with the Dallas Cowboys because, they kind of treaded water whenever Cooper Rush was in there starting in place of Dak Prescott whenever he got injured early on in the season. But now we're seeing this offense click, right? And we see some of the issues that they have, a little bit of timing issues. It seems like Dak gets happy feet in the back of the pocket where it's kind of like, okay, well, what are we doing here? You want to see him clean that stuff up, but you kind of think he's going to, right? I like the possible addition of Odell Beckham, and I want to get your opinion on this as well, because to me, Odell Beckham Jr. was like the guy I would never want on the Dallas Cowboys whenever he was on the Giants, right?
Sure.
Even like that short stint that he had in Cleveland.
Oh, Cleveland, yeah.
You kind of saw like the guy is still super immature. It seems like over the last year and a half or so, the guy has matured a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
He was the main reason why the Rams even got to the Super Bowl, giving another option to Stafford along with Cooper Kupp. I would like to see that with OBJ going to the Cowboys, right? Because it seems like they're trying to force feed CeeDee Lamb, and don't get me wrong, the dude's a monster, right? Like the way that he is able to balance himself and run through people and keep going, right? We're being asked about James Washington right now as well. He's coming off an injury. He's a rookie. You don't know what to expect from that. Michael Gallup, we've seen, he has like these flashes, but he's not the same guy that he was even at this point last year, right? So it's kind of like getting someone like Odell Beckham, like maybe you don't need him, but man, that gives you so much more as far as like your weapons and everything go.
Look, in order to be successful, it's about depth, and you could never have enough depth, especially at a wide receiver or a running back position in football. I mean, it's kind of common sense, right? Ultimately, what a guy like that brings to the table is it's like, my goodness, Gallup is heating up. Lamb is Lamb. And then you bring him to the table, it's like, what? The sky is the limit. And he would be perfect for a postseason run. And that's exactly the way they would be doing it and be thinking. And, of course, then you try and sign him for a couple more years. Because you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, the fact remains is that their offense is extremely potent. That's the reason why they scored 30-something points in the fourth quarter against the Colts. And look, their defense certainly helped that cause. But with that being said, if you can get a wide receiver who, really helped the Rams last year, even in the Super Bowl, he caught that touchdown pass and unfortunately sustained the ACL injury, and that was that. But bottom line is that you don't turn down a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. if he's available and he's willing to play for your team, even if you just get him in, January and can use in January and hopefully into February, he makes your team that much better, that much more dangerous.
Mike McCarthy over the last few years has gotten a bad rap for like his coaching decisions, things of that nature. I like the way that he's kind of been going about this, right? Like we're seeing an aggressive nature out of him. I guess embracing the analytics thing of like maybe we don't punt on this side of the 50. We can just go for it and see kind of how it goes. But whenever you look at the Dallas Cowboys and the way that they're set up, right? They've got a Super Bowl winning coach. They've got an amazing defense. We hear it all the time. Defense wins championships. They've got a run game to help keep them balanced. And say what you will about Zeke and Pollard, that is one hell of a 1-2 punch.
Pretty damn good.
Right?
Not bad.
And then you have an explosive enough receiving core. And the issue that the Dallas Cowboys had over the last couple of years, Brandon, was the fact that their offensive line didn't have any depth. Tyler Smith, the rookie, has gone in there and played at a Pro Bowl level. This dude is good.
Yeah, he is.
You got Connor McGovern in there who's finally healthy as well.
Smith coming back.
With Jason Peters, the old veteran who can be put into any of those positions.
Yep.
And then Tyron Smith coming back as well.
Huge.
You finally got depth
Yeah.
on that Dallas Cowboys offensive line. I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself with this team because I'm getting super excited. I'm trying to like stifle my
Well,
excitement.
you
with
need
this
to
team.
because we know it's the Cowboys.
They've done this to us before.
Just
Last year. Oh my God, sliding in the I can't.
Yeah, I mean, we've
Flashbacks.
been there and done that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's okay to get excited, but I mean, as I've told any Cowboys fan, talk to me in mid-January. It's like, if by then they're actually winning a playoff game and have made it to the NFC title game or so by late January and gone farther than they have in 30 years nearly, then I'll get excited. But until then, they could win every game from here on out, and I still don't know how excited I would be. I mean, potential means nothing unless you win in the postseason. And again, we've seen teams be hot going into the postseason, and it's nice to be hot, but it's all about the bounces and then, good luck, bad luck, and what happens in the postseason and who gets hot at the very, very right time. And I don't know about you, but if Dallas doesn't win the division, I'm damn scared about being the 5th seed and going into Tampa in round 1. The way they have Brady and, come on now. You want to talk about being scared shitless. Hey, right?
Tom Brady in the playoffs is not the guy that I want to see.
Tampa's 2-0 against us the last couple of years, last time I checked.
Tom Brady is undefeated against the Dallas Cowboys in his entire career.
That's a scary game. And Tom Brady is, Mr. Comeback. And we've seen this his last 2 games, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, look, here's the bottom line. Obviously, if you win the division, you put yourself in much better position. That goes without saying. But, hey, you finish the 5th seed and, you end up going to Tampa. Well, that would be a good test in round 1, wouldn't it be?
How terrible is it for the Philadelphia Eagles that you're 11-1 right now and you haven't clinched the division?
I mean,
most teams at 11-1 would have clinched the division.
Sure.
The NFC East is an absolute monster right now.
It's an amazing division.
All four
teams are going to make the playoffs, are more than likely. It looks like
that's utterly insane. Yeah. I'm normally the person, Brandon, and maybe I can maybe you can persuade me on this, but I've always been the guy that's like, okay, win your division, you get to host the playoff game, right? That's an awesome thing.
Sure.
But if Tampa Bay goes in there and wins their division with a 500 or just over or just under 500 record, and they get to host a playoff game, it makes the case for how can you put a team like the Dallas Cowboys, who's going to be a double-digit win team,
sure,
who, if it's not the Cowboys or if it's the Eagles, either one of those teams had a phenomenal season, but they have to go on the road against a team that was an absolute dumpster fire and played in the worst division in football, able to host a home game.
And that's something they've talked about changing, and it needs to be changed sooner rather than later. I mean, it's nice to win your division and ultimately have the luxury of hosting that first-round playoff game. But, look, you got a team they don't have a good enough record. Then last time I checked, you really need to change the playoff formatting, and therefore that team will at least get a home playoff game. And that's just stupid. I'm sorry. It doesn't make any sense. You have a better record that has won you the opportunity to host that first round game, if nothing else. But yeah, I mean, that's something the NFL's talked about changing, but for right now, it's been all smoke and mirrors and they've done absolutely nothing. So yes, it has to be changed just sooner rather than later.
There's a real possibility too, and I didn't think about this, Brandon, that the Dallas Cowboys could end the season almost doubling up the wins that like a team like Tampa Bay has, and still have to go on the road to play that team. Like it's insane to think about
ridiculous.
that. Destiny already hating on the fact that we've mentioned Tom Brady multiple times in the show. Tom Brady, the most dreamy man in the history of men, an absolute Adonis. Tom Brady, Ryan Reynolds. I don't know, like
Tip and Cone.
yeah. Tom Brady, Ryan Reynolds, Brandon, and I. That's the way that it works in the pecking order of the sexiest men alive.
This is phenomenal. I love it.
Okay, so we've been asked here again about James Washington. Can he help the Dallas Cowboys offense?
Sure.
I mean,
Why not?
I mean, any time you get another receiver, but the guy's coming off of an injury, right? Like what?
To be determined.
I think you should stifle back expectations for a dude who's coming off of injury. Probably doesn't have the repetition that he needs with the first team squad. Maybe you fit him into like as that fourth receiver to get him going, because you've got some pretty decent guys there. The Dallas Cowboys are also more tight end heavy than any team in the NFL.
They are,
which is awesome because those 4 tight ends seem to just be game changers at any time they want to be. And besides, like to me, I don't know if you really need a guy like James Washington to like come in and be the second guy, right? Because you've got a team that can actually run the ball, that can stay balanced, that can do that. As long as the Dallas Cowboys stay balanced, to me, I don't think that there's another team out there that can beat them. It's whenever they become one-dimensional and Dak is forcing the ball to other receivers. You don't have that other receiver, like we were talking about. Like if we got an Odell Beckham, you don't have that number 2 guy that can help out a CeeDee Lamb.
Sure.
Even with the tight ends being as good as they are, they can catch tutties, they can catch some passes, but we've seen them have fumble issues. We've seen them have drop issues, right? So if the Dallas Cowboys become one-dimensional, maybe James Washington can help out, but you're putting too much pressure on a rookie coming off an injury.
Yeah, you can't do that. I mean, it's you have to give him time to become more acclimated to being back in there. It's been a while, and that's the big question, Marcus, how anyone's going to do coming off a significant injury, and it takes time. So the best thing you could hope for is by the playoffs, he's ready to go, he's ready to rock and roll and take care of business. And I mean, ultimately, once you become one-dimensional, that's the way to beat the Cowboys, is to turn them into a one-dimensional team. Same thing we saw at Green Bay. They deviated away from the run. Whenever they've done that, it seems like they end up losing. And of course, we talk about the Philadelphia loss where they didn't have their starting quarterback. So, I mean, it counts, but it doesn't count. I mean, that was a game they could have easily won. And that's the one thing, though, with the exception of the Tampa Bay loss week 1, it's good to know, it's assuring to at least know that any other loss, which is only 3 this year, obviously, that you've at least been in there and had an opportunity to get that victory.
So the Dallas Cowboys go into tomorrow's game a 17-point favorite over the woeful Houston Texans, who are 1-11-1. You're talking about like a great record. Like they should just end the season right there, 1-11-1. I love the symmetry there. That's the only thing I'm happy about with that. But they're 1-11-1. They're a 17-point underdog at home against the Dallas Cowboys. They just lost to Deshaun Watson. It wasn't like because Deshaun Watson, had a fantastic game. It was a Cleveland Browns defense. This seems like it's going to be the trap game for the Dallas Cowboys. And it seems like the next 2 games could be that game for them because they got the Texans, then they got the Jags. And yes, Trevor Lawrence has gotten a lot better, but those are 2 nice little tune-up games that might get you kind of off focus because you're looking at Philadelphia on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, and that's the thing is you really do have to take it one game at a time. Look, the teams that you're supposed to beat, there are no gimmies in the NFL. There really are. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care
Unless it's the Houston Texans.
Well, I mean, you would hope so, right? You would hope that they're going to tear them a new one tomorrow, but it's you have to play the game first. And I mean, Houston has talented running back, and they have a good coach in Lovie Smith, and it's an interstate rivalry. So I mean, ultimately, you just never know when you come into a game like this. Are they going to play down to their opponent? With that being said, if they really are who we think they are, then they will easily take care of business tomorrow and continue to prove why they are arguably the best team in football.
Let's talk about some of the games that happened. Let's talk about that Monday Night Football game. Tom Brady having his first ever comeback, being down 13 points in the fourth quarter. And then what we saw from Baker Mayfield on Thursday night, being with a brand new team, was with the team for less than 48 hours.
That was impressive.
And it comes back down 13 points again, leading them to victory within 3.5 minutes. Both these comebacks happening in 3.5 minutes. What was going through your mind watching, especially that Baker Mayfield comeback?
Well, here's my philosophy on that comeback.
The sun shines on a dog's ass.
I
every now
mean,
and then.
look, here's the thing: is that football is football, and I know that everyone says, "Well, it's really hard to become acclimated and learn a new playbook, especially when the playbook is this thick and yada yada." But in the end, you people need to remember football is football, and I mean, it is X's and O's. And the point is, you got to find the open guy. And I know it's really hard to learn a new system, but to me, that shows the kid does have talent. I mean, you pull off the victory, you pull the rabbit out of your hat, and any way you slice it up, that was an impressive come from behind win. And I mean, look, I don't know what his future holds, especially with that organization, with any organization. But I mean, Baker Mayfield has proven at times that he's a good quarterback, and he's also been in some bad situations, and he's also proven that he's a lousy quarterback. But I think that you need to understand that if you're a decent enough quarterback, you can go in any situation and get the victory. And if you have some decent receivers, which they do, a Jefferson, that was a great catch. In the end, man, he's been playing the game since he was a kid. And if you're a halfway decent quarterback, you can come in and you can win anywhere. It's pretty exciting. That's why I love football.
Do you think that there might have been something there with like, yeah, the Panthers don't have like an overwhelming talent, but you have someone like Christian McCaffrey who, deserves to have the ball his way. A guy like Robbie Anderson and people like that like they're so ball dominant. Odell Beckham whenever he was in Cleveland, and we saw whenever OBJ was injured that Baker Mayfield played better. Like he wasn't trying to force the ball to these stars. Now you don't have a star really receiver until Cooper Kupp comes back, if he comes back this year for the Rams. And it just seems like Baker Mayfield was like, okay, I don't have to force it to this diva, wide receiver who's going to ask for the ball time and time again, get in the locker room and all that. It seemed like he just played a free game without having to worry about anything. And like you said, just went out and said, you know what? No, just play some football.
And that's pretty much what you have to do. I mean, especially when really you have nothing to lose. I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs. And, it's kind of like, hey, I mean, McVay's a good coach. You're coming into a situation where what's the worst that happens? I mean, okay, you screw up and then you're gone again this year from somewhere else. And I mean, he had everything to gain and nothing to lose. He really did. And that was a very impressive win. And he wins a couple more games for you here down the stretch, then you have to say, hey, at least he's going to solidify himself as potentially your backup going into next year, especially the way Stafford has played, and Stafford has had a bad year. And ultimately, I mean, you don't have your best receiver. So that's why you have to love a game like that, because it is really a fairy tale outcome for a quarterback like Baker Mayfield. And I don't care what anybody says, no matter how good you are, if you don't have a good offensive line, if you don't have good running backs, and if you don't have the receivers, then you're only as good as your O-line and receivers will enable you to be. And he was in a bad situation in Carolina any way you want to look at it.
If you're the Rams, do you contemplate, because you've got that huge contract of Matthew Stafford's looming over your bench, do you contemplate, okay, we're not, really going to be a Super Bowl contending team. We lost a lot of pieces. Our gamble paid off. We won the Super Bowl, but we're not going to be a contender for the Super Bowl going forward. Do you think that there's going to be a time where they just kind of like, oh, okay, well, let's get rid of this guy because now we have a Baker Mayfield on a very small contract. We could probably try to grow around this, because that's how we've seen teams win Super Bowls, right? You don't win it by giving your quarterback all the money in the world. You win it by getting your quarterback on a team-friendly contract and then building up the talent around him.
Well, the thing is that, I mean, the Rams with a team like that, again, defensively, they're still, I mean, they've struggled. I mean, we know they've struggled, but I think they still have the core there to continue to be a good team. I still think you have some good offensive weapons. So, I mean, Stafford had a lot of good weapons last year, and Stafford had a great defense to work with, especially with the addition of Von Miller, who has since departed, to Buffalo, and now he's out for the year. But ultimately, I mean, if you can keep him for a very reasonable price, which clearly is the case at this point, I mean, he's not going to demand a lot of money because of the circumstances that have more recently transpired around him, then I don't see why you wouldn't keep a guy like that in your roster and kind of see what happens with Stafford going forward, because he has had a lousy year, a lot different from last year. But certainly, I mean, I think, again, I've noted that he's showing the talent to be a winner where he's gone. So, I mean, everybody was busting his balls left and right based on what happened in Carolina. But again, look at the situation here, man. I mean, this is a thing where, if again he wins a few more games, and you kind of got to continue to say, hey, look, what has this guy done for us lately? And he's done pretty well thus far.
Fire and Ice out here at Bikini Joes, 3309 Rich Beem on the corner of Rich Beem and Zaragoza, Suite 101. It's Saturday. That means they got the $2 PBR red beers, BOGO Nachos, which I already smell right now. They smell absolutely amazing. From 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., they got the $4 Vegas bombs, nickel pints on selected drafts. On Sunday, it's Margarita Madness. Buy one jumbo, giant, or tower margarita, and the second is only $1. Those BOGO Nachos, Brandon, we have been bragging about it. I think we got so excited, even last week, whenever I was like, yeah, we got the possibility of coming back over here to Bikini Joes. You were like, oh, the BOGO Nachos.
The BOGO Nachos. I mean, you texted me midweek. You're like, we're confirmed for Bikini Joes. I'm like, phenomenal. I love their BOGO Nachos.
Just nachos.
That's what we look forward to, right?
We're going to mainline nachos right now.
They're pretty good. They're good nachos, man. They're phenomenal. They're in a trash can lid too. So no, they're very good. We look forward to them.
Is that your line of demarcation? That's how you know something's really good, is if it's in a trash can lid?
I mean, it's very rare you see things that are good in a trash can lid. But
it's like Famous Dave's. Everything comes out in a trash can lid.
Hey, anything that comes out in a trash can lid is bound to be good for me.
It's not quite garbage.
It's not garbage. It's trash can nachos.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what we can expect for this next round of games coming up. Again, we're already week 13 in the NFL season. It seems like it's just flying by us. We're gonna miss this in a couple of weeks. It's not gonna be fun for us. We're gonna be fiending for it some more. But we got the XFL coming up.
I can't wait. Should do somersaults now or later.
St. Louis Battlehawks.
He doesn't like a battle hawk.
But let's talk a little bit about what we saw in a couple of the games over the past weekend, right? The San Francisco 49ers, one of the best teams in the NFL. They've got one of the most dominating defenses in the NFL. They had a quarterback in Jimmy G who just seems to win in that system only, right? And seems to be the only guy that Mike Shanahan has had in San Francisco that can win in that system. He goes down, broken foot, out for the rest of the season. All their hopes now lie on Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy. A lot of people thought that Baker Mayfield was going to go over there because Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in Cleveland whenever he first got his start there. So it's kind of like an easy transition for Baker Mayfield. But now you're looking at the fact that one of the better teams is relying on the guy who was the last draft pick in this year's NFL draft. All their hopes for a Super Bowl run, because this is a team that can do it,
sure, is
on the shoulders of a 7th round last picked quarterback.
Yeah, it's a tough predicament for the Niners, but I mean, if nothing else, we've seen teams that, have good quarterbacks or are good game managers, but not great quarterbacks win Super Bowls before. So that's certainly the light at the end of the tunnel, and the silver lining is that A, you made it to the NFC title game. B, your defense is allowing like 16-point-something points per game. And lastly, you do have a good offense. So if this kid can at least remain composed and keep it together and at least be a good game manager, then they still have a legitimate shot of making it to a Super Bowl and maybe beyond. I mean, so it's really going to depend a lot on his play, but whenever you have that good of a defense, anything is possible. I mean, again, heck, was it the 2000 Ravens won it with Trent Dilfer as their QB. So, I mean, not to take anything away from the guy, but it was Trent Dilfer. I mean, bottom line is that his biggest problem is that he's a rookie and he has very, little experience, especially in this circumstances. It's hard enough to be a rookie, and it's hard enough to be thrown into a situation like this. But, if he can at least be a decent game manager with that type of a defense, the sky really is the limit. They can do anything with the Niners, but it's going to be tough.
And then you got to remember too, like they've got Christian McCaffrey, they've got Deebo Samuel.
They have a lot of weapons.
They can just become like a team that decides they want to run the ball and dump it off to Greg Kittle every now and again.
Easy passes that are not high risk. And I mean, they have a lot going for them. They're definitely, to me, going to win their division, obviously, and that you get that home first round game. And
I don't know if it's obvious though, man, because look at what Seattle's doing.
That's true. That's a good point. I've forgotten about Seattle. Geno Smith is having a brilliant year. They have a lot of weapons, well-coached team.
I would have never thought.
No, you and everyone else. But how about Geno Smith, huh? I mean, that's impressive. And
the dude has MVP
aspirations.
Numbers.
Yeah, he's pretty damn good. He really is. I'm very, very impressed with the Seahawks. And you're right. I think Seattle's what one game back or something. So that, and I know they play again. So I mean, it's going to be an interesting last 5 weeks of the regular season, especially in that division.
It's going to be fun to watch as the football season, the regular season comes down to an end here over the next couple of weeks. Let's look at some of the tight races that are out there as well, Brandon. Minnesota's running away with that division.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they're losing that. Although they are an underdog on the road this weekend against the Detroit Lions.
Well, I mean, Detroit can score.
I was going to say, Detroit's got a fun offense.
St. Brown's, something like there's like 20 receivers or something that were chosen ahead of him that he is outscoring all of them. And you want to talk about a QB fitting into a system well. Golf has done well with them, and they can score. And you know what? I mean, I don't know that I'd have Minnesota as an underdog in Detroit, but it wouldn't at all surprise me if Detroit wins that game. Detroit's an up-and-coming team. Good running backs, decent defense. I mean, although they usually allow a lot of points rather in shootouts, but their offense is really good. I wouldn't be surprised to see them win that game.
And then you look at what they did, too, at the trade deadline. They traded away Hawkinson, their number one tight end. He goes over to Minnesota now. And it seems like they didn't skip a beat at all. Like, this team just keeps going and scoring points. I said at the beginning of the season, you laughed at me. I said this is going to be a fun team to watch.
They are.
They've been fun.
Yeah, they are.
And if anything, like, they're competitive. That's the main thing, right? Like, you want to see a little bit of growth. I hope that Dan Campbell doesn't lose his job because they're not winning at a clip to sustain and justify keeping him.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope that the Ford family looks at it and says, this team has shown a lot of growth from last year to this year. And allows this process to kind of play out because it seems like this team has bought into every word Dan Campbell says.
Well, yeah, and if you happen to beat Minnesota, then
you
you betcha. That's
biting off kneecaps now.
Oh, what's this all about? Yeah, we're clowns. This is, it would be a big win, obviously, beating the 10-2 Vikings are 10-2 if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Anyways, long story short, it's going to be a great week. I'm excited to see what that game holds.
This is the 6th time in NFL history that a team with an 83% win percentage or higher, like the Minnesota Vikings have, has gone on the road to a team that is under 500 and been an underdog. The previous times, Brandon, the underdog is covered.
Hey, I mean, look, it's Minnesota. They've won some big games. They really have. They've been very impressive.
They got their ass kicked by the Cowboys.
I know, thank God. But other than that, hey, that win against the Jets was pretty big last week. The Jets have been
the Jets. That's another team
they've been
that's fun to
impressive.
watch.
Their defense has been really good, and they've sustained a lot of injuries. But I'm really impressed with the Jets. I really am.
The Jets are fun to watch when Mike White is the quarterback.
They are, yeah, when White's in there. Exactly.
What do you think you do there if you're the Jets, right? Because you spent a high first-round pick on Zach Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't seem to get it. He has like these very few and far between flashes where you could say, oh, okay, maybe, right? Like there's something there, kind of. But have you seen enough from him to warrant where, one, he was drafted, and then B, going forward with him? Because you see that Mike White is able to put up yards.
Yeah.
They might not score because they just don't have that type of offense yet. The loss of their running back, his name escapes me right now, but the rookie that had
Carter, right? No, not Carter. The other kid.
Yeah.
Look, Carter is playing, but I know who you're talking about. Robinson came in there, but he's hurt. The kid, the rookie who got.
Yeah, I want to say it's Bryce Payne or something.
Bryce, yeah, he tore his ACL, didn't he?
So, like, without him there being able to punch the ball in, they become like a team that can't really run the ball the way that they wanted to begin the season. So, obviously, they're a little more one-dimensional than what they'd like to be. But you've seen with Mike White, they can get yards, and they can make games fun. A lot of the games they played in, like, the last couple of weeks prior to Mike White taking over at quarterback were just not good games.
No, they were not. And that's the thing, is that when you see a situation where you got to go with who's winning for you. And look, I mean, obviously there are certain circumstances like the Cowboys, whatever, but long story short is with a team like that, who the expectations aren't very high, if you have a guy that's got more chemistry and gelling, and even, you have close losses at Minnesota and it seems to just be working, you still have the other kid who is like, he was drafted this year, was drafted so highly, he could be your QB of the future, but now is now. And that's the most important thing, is that winning the here and now. And if White is the kid to do it, then you stick with White, in my opinion.
I mean, you have to, right? Like if it's the guy that's keeping you competitive, you have to, and it doesn't hurt because we saw how well sitting behind a guy like Brett Favre, and I'm not comparing Mike White to Brett Favre, but sitting on the bench helped out people like Aaron Rodgers, right? And then you have these guys that have to come in and play as rookies in bad situations, the Alex Smiths, the Geno Smiths, guys like that have to come into the NFL and then take their punches on the chin because there's no one else to do it. And they take a longer time to get to the curve, right? You look at what Geno Smith is doing. It's kind of like the resurgence that Alex Smith had late in his career where he became a, borderline Hall of Famer. He went from being a complete bust to a borderline Hall of Fame quarterback because he's a really good quarterback, right?
And that's the thing is that sometimes a quarterback's or really a player in general, all of their talent isn't fully lived up to that potential because they're in the wrong system, because they're playing for the wrong coach. And then you go to another system and all of a sudden, boom, it's like, where have you been your whole career? You know what I mean?
I did a little bit of research, Brandon, and I found this out just by looking at team websites and team history and stuff like that. Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears last week became the top 20. He's the 20th all-time passer for the Chicago Bears.
That's insane.
This is his second year.
That's insane.
Who is the Chicago Bears all-time passing leader?
Well, you wouldn't say McMahon because that'd be too obvious. I'm going to say, let me think of all the crappy quarterbacks. They've had like 100 quarterbacks over the last 30 seasons. Not Cutler. Is it Cutler?
100% Jay Cutler.
Okay, it is Cutler. I was thinking
26,000 passing yards.
I was thinking, is it some stupid answer like Eric Kramer, like somebody that was there 25 years ago? But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it was Cutler. I mean, he did have some decent years.
Guess who number 2 is?
Kramer?
No.
Justin Fields?
I just told you he's top 20.
Right. Number 2. Let me think. It's not McMahon.
No.
Okay.
McMahon, I think, is
he had like 2 good years.
10, though.
Kramer, maybe?
No.
Okay.
Sid Luckman.
Luckman? Back in like the 60s? Oh, my God. Really?
Baker Mayfield. Jared Goff.
Sid Luckman.
A bunch of other guys like awesome. That. Just Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff would be second all time.
That's crazy.
In Chicago Bears history.
Like your Bears history. Way to go, man. A team that I actually root for, but that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, so I decided I'd do a little bit of love, show you a little bit of love. You got the blue and orange working on right now.
I got my University of Illinois, my brother's alma mater here.
Yeah, the Illini.
A little Illini love right now.
Fighting Illini.
It's my second favorite college team, only to UTEP, of course.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I graduated from UTEP, so I have my UTEP.
So did I, but I'm still a Texas Tech fan.
Well, I've just always been UTEP. When I first started attending college football games, it was UTEP. So I've always been loyal since 2020 to them. And 2020 for 2 years, since 2000 when I first started going to UTEP.
The last 2 years I've been
2 years I've been a UTEP fan. No, since 2000 when I first stared going to UTEP games. So
at least no one could say you're a bandwagon fan.
I've been a bandwagon fan for the last 2 years. But, U of I is Mizzou is my third team. That's where my sister went to school. So I'm also a Tigers fan too.
Okay, see, I can understand that. Then, like, you're doing it for the family.
My siblings,
showing them
teams.
a little bit of love. Yeah. I got that. Hey, it's cool. It's admirable.
Yeah.
Your team is just absolute hot garbage.
Yeah, you could say that again. Hey, by the way, how about UTEP playing in Chicago against DePaul for the first time since 1967 today? That's kind of cool.
Oh yeah, no, that's gonna be a fun time. I always get excited for UTEP basketball. I can't wait to kind of see where they're going. Again, I don't have expectations though. Like a lot of fans are like, oh, they need to go out there and make the NCAA tournament. Yes, the NCAA tournament allows 68 teams to get in there. It's hard.
Yeah,
there's 300 teams to choose from.
I finally met Coach Golding in person.
Nice.
Like after the NMSU game, he was at an establishment, and I happened to meet him. That guy is cool as heck. I mean, I know everyone said how cool he is, but when you actually get to meet the guy, he is as personable and down to earth as anybody I've ever met. I really enjoyed finally meeting the guy. Really cool guy.
We're gonna have to find a way. We got to talk to our guy Jeff Darby, find a way for us to get credentials for some of these UTEP basketball games.
Absolutely. Why not? I mean, because they're going to be exciting. They're clearly an up-and-coming team looking forward to conference play and really looking forward to tonight's game. I mean, against DePaul. I mean, it's a winnable game, although DePaul could very well pull it off. But, it's a tough place to play in Chicago. But, yes, they've had some big wins so far this year.
Does UTEP make the NCAA tournament?
No, because it's UTEP and conference play. They as crappy as the USA, is. I don't think they're quite there yet, but they definitely improved this year and hopefully make some sort of postseason play, maybe the NIT.
All right, Brandon, we're going to go ahead and call it a game today. I can't wait to see, what goes on with the TVs right here in a little bit. I know soccer is going to be on in just a little bit as well. The rest of the World Cup. I've been watching college basketball on one TV, golf classics on one TV. We have the FCS, I believe is what it is.
I believe it
series going on right now between
South Dakota State
and Holy Cross, and that's been a pretty good game to watch. Did you see the highlights? Because I know you didn't watch the game, but did you see the highlights from yesterday's FCS game?
I did not. Yesterday was a busy day.
I can't remember the teams that played, but there were 129 combined points between the two teams. The final score is 66-63. Could you imagine scoring 63 points and losing the game?
Never.
In football.
Never in a million years. I could see in basketball, but not football.
Oh, yeah. Well, basketball, 63 points would be an offensive burst for the UTEP
You haven't
Miners.
scored very much. Well, maybe you were playing college ball. So, you're my buddy.
63 points was an average back whenever we were watching the NBA.
Back in my day, Sonny.
We used to shoot free throws underhanded. Anyway, we want to thank our friends over here at Bikini Joes. Remember, every Saturday you can come on out here, 3390 Rich Beem on the corner of Rich Beem and Zaragoza. Saturdays, they got the $2 PBR red beers, BOGO Nachos, which we're about to go devour right now. The $4 Vegas bombs, nickel pints on select drafts. And Sundays, Margarita Madness by one Jumbo Giant or Tower Margarita. The second one is $1. Brandon, as always, it's been an absolute honor and a privilege, sir.
I feel the same way, my brother.
Show with you, and we will see everybody next week. After next week, we're going to take a break for the holidays because, come on.
Hey, but it doesn't mean we won't be covering the Sun Bowl, right?
Oh, we're going to be covering the Sun Bowl.
I'm
we
excited.
better be covering
the food is phenomenal, by the way.
I've never had the media spread.
You better have your appetite around 10 a.m. They get catered the best Mexican food in town. What a spread. We're going together. We're going to have a good time up in the press box before game time.
Who would have thought it was bringing up the BOGO Nachos and then the catering at the Sun Bowl to finally get a smile out of my guy today?
There's a good grease there pregame. Let me tell you, I'm excited about that one.
Everybody will see you next week.
Buddy.